Goddard Enterprises headlines of the CBC Evening News.
The tourism minister disappointed about the Rihanna concert setback. Saul gets the green light to acquire Esso. And in sports, Chargers are the men's volleyball champs.
With the compliments of Goddard Enterprises, those are the headlines of tonight's edition of the Evening News. Next on CBC.
Credible, balanced, committed. This is the CBC Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Broom. This is the CBC Evening News. Tourism Minister Richard Seeley is disappointed about the postponement of the Barbados leg of Rihanna's Diamond World Tour. Speaking this morning at the annual general meeting of the Tourism Development Corporation, Mr. Seeley said revenue from overseas bookings will be lost. He hopes these losses can be recovered when the concert is rescheduled.
Hopefully we can get back most, if not all, of those persons who had booked. But the immediate effect obviously would be not having those arrivals and the consequential bed nights and spending and everything else that would have come out of it. But as I understand it, there are some discussions taking place, and they're looking at when the possible event, when it can be postponed until, and at that point then we can see what we can do.
Mr. Seeley says a significant amount of groundwork had already been put in place for the show.
We had engaged with a number of airline partners that cooperated with us. A number of hotels obviously had been anticipating arrivals and so on, bookings. There was also some special charters and so that were put on coming out of Martinique and other parts of the Caribbean, and all of that. Now we have to, as I say, relook and see when the concert will be held and have them back.
The Barbados Tourism Authority has categorically denied there were attempts by certain government departments to frustrate the importation of equipment for the now postponed Rihanna concert. In a statement, the BTA says it is also untrue that government departments were frustrating the issuance of short-term work permits for technical teams associated with the show, as suggested by reports circulated on the internet and social media sites. The statement noted that both the BTA and Rihanna continue to be committed to Barbados. The BTA says it continues to enjoy a very good relationship with Rihanna's management, Rock Nation, and that it was informed by Rock Nation on Thursday night about the show's postponement. The BTA says 15 containers had arrived in Barbados and were cleared through the port, representing the first set of 30 containers for the show. Acknowledging that some fans from outside of Barbados would have been unable to change their bookings, the authorities said it is working with partners to help them enjoy their stay when they arrive. Government is tonight clearing the air about rumors that the Frundle-Stewart administration deliberately forced the opposition to debate the failed no-confidence motion before they were ready. Prime Minister Stewart says that's not the case. Shane Seeley has more.
Prime Minister Frundle-Stewart has categorically dismissed any suggestion that his administration forced the debate of the motion of no confidence last Tuesday to government's advantage. In revealing the moments leading up to the motion in Parliament against Finance Minister Chris Sinclair, Mr. Stewart said it was he who on that day asked Ms. Motley if she was ready to proceed with the motion.
And I asked it within the earshot of Boyce himself. I asked it in the earshot of the Education Minister Ronald Jones. I asked it in the earshot of the Attorney General, and of course the clerks at the table. They all heard when I asked the question, and they all heard the response. So the decision to debate the no confidence motion on Tuesday was the decision of the leader of the opposition. It was not the decision of the government.
The Prime Minister told those gathered for the St. Michael North Branch meeting at the Seroptimus village that he always knew the motion would be defeated. Mr. Stewart also made it known that he has full confidence in his finance minister.
Let me tell you something with the Prime Minister, see? If I did not have confidence in Chris Sinclair, the whole country would know he could be Minister of Finance.
Prime Minister Frondell Stewart says government will be sticking to its 19-month plan for economic recovery and says his administration remains committed to the task ahead. Shane Seeley, CBC News.
Thanks, Shane. Well, the Prime Minister also commented on the recent newspaper article featuring the picture of 2 children allegedly involved in a sex act. Public outrage has been rife about the back page image on the weekend publication. While expressing concern about the issue, he said he's convinced that some people are bent on casting Barbados in a negative light.
If you want people all across the world to believe that all that goes on in the schools of Barbados is that young people have sex, that's a matter for you. I know different. I know that Barbados still has one of the best and most fertile education systems in the entire world. I must confess to you that I am a little concerned.
And the National Organization of Women is adding its voice to others outraged at the recent newspaper article. Now President Marilyn Rice Bowen says while recognizing the children were wrong, Barbadians as responsible citizens need to protect children.
We firmly believe that this matter should have been referred to the Ministry of Education and the Royal Barbados Police Force for resolution. Our thoughts and prayers are with the children involved in this matter, and in particular the young female whose recent incarceration may very well be attributed to the ravenous and irresponsible act of journalism.
Barbadian Bishop Wesley Dare of the Covenant Life Teaching Center in Green Hill is also condemning the article. He's called on the church to speak out against it and demand an apology from the company. According to Bishop Dare, the article says something that goes against morality.
I believe it was totally immoral. I think the people who carried it in the paper are irresponsible and unwise. And I'm not going to be one of those who are going to stand up and say that they should resign, but I think they need to apologize. I believe somebody has to apologize to the children of this nation for exposing this kind of lewdness publicly. I go beyond that. Someone should end up in prison. That's advertising blue movies. That's pornography. And in last time I know, people used to get arrested for becoming a part of pornography.
Meantime, we hear police are conducting a probe into the newspaper report about 2 children allegedly having sex in a classroom at a rural school. Police Public Relations Officer Inspector David Welch did not say if charges would be laid in the matter, but confirmed investigations are continuing. Today's edition indicated that the 14-year-old girl who was allegedly involved in the incident has been sent to the government-run Somerville. In other news now, 30-year-old Hassan Catlin of Bridge Road, St. Michael, who was charged with 3 counts of money laundering in sums of just over $90,000, has been remanded. He appeared in the District A Magistrates Court earlier today and was remanded until November 25th. Meanwhile, 28-year-old Police Constable Andwe Jean-Baptiste, who also appeared in the District A Magistrate Court, charged with 4 counts of money laundering, was granted bail in the sum of $25,000 with 1 surety. He is to return to court on February 24th next year. Consumers are today paying a bit more for liquefied petroleum gas, better known as bottled gas. As of midnight, the retail price of a 100-pound cylinder was adjusted from $176.45 to $184.87, an increase of $8.42. The 25-pound cylinder went up by $2.11, moving from $49.21 to $51.32. The 22-pound cylinder increased by $1.85 and will now cost $45.32. And the 20-pound cylinder has moved from $39.52 to $41.20. That's an increase of $1.68. Government wants to settle the Al Barak affair before the end of the year. That's the word from Minister of Housing and Lands, Dennis Kelman. He says government will pay the contractor the over $30 million owed. We hear more from Kishmar Sinjis.
Mr. Kelman made a revelation at last night's DLP St. Michael's Southeast Branch meeting at the Parkinson School. There he suggested that Mr. Barak was unfavored by the Barbados Labour Party and not the DLP.
We, as a good political party, cannot allow a man like Barak to stand out in the dark without settling his case. We must settle his case, because if that was the case of other people, it would have been settled. There are some people who came here and did a bad job on Amman, the Barbados Labour Party settled it. On the post office, Valen can tell you about that, they settled it. But they refused to settle their own contract.
The housing minister voiced his support at efforts to bring the Sandals brand to Barbados. He says government is working to correct the economy and is now rolling out its capital works projects. This, he says, has the BLP envious.
We are doing the sugarcane project, we are rolling out the hotels, we are building houses, we are doing the environmental projects. Man, we're doing everything here. We are doing what we should have done prior to the election, we are now doing. And what is frightening them, they are saying that they can see what happened to the Democratic Labour Party in 1999 now happened to them in 2018. Because when you done with them, you don't want to see them, you know. Because all they can do is bluff.
Mr. Kelman took a jab at the opposition, suggesting there are divisions within that party. He says there are some MPs who still support former leader Owen Arthur. He says some are also backing the new deputy leader, Kerry Simmons. He believes a no-confidence motion should have been brought against opposition leader Mia Motley instead of Finance Minister Chris Sinclair.
If Prime Minister brings a motion and he says to us to speak, we will speak. And even if he doesn't say to speak, we will speak. Because we will back our leader. And you see what got them? They walk around and they said that Prime Minister doesn't talk. But what they didn't know, that Prime Minister Stroke had his land sharks out there eating up all the bait. And at election time, he was fresh. So whatever bait they brought, he devoured all for himself.
Mr. Kelman believes the BLP is only seeking power and is about votes. Kishmar Sinjis, CBC News.
Opposition leader Mia Motley wants the Memorandum of Understanding signed between government and Sandals Resorts International to be laid in Parliament. Ms. Motley says it needs to be done in the interest of transparency.
That is why we say that a Memorandum of Understanding must be laid in Parliament, and no interpretation by a minister will suffice, because we do not know the implications of what is truly now to be a free zone at Sandals, because no shop is to pay duties for any of its input.
Ms. Motley said it was reminiscent of previous scenarios with other companies. She also had questions about the tendering process for the operation of the existing Amman property.
We wanted to know then, as we want to know this morning, when was the tender advertised for the management contract of the Amman Beach Village by the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. And if it was not advertised, who else did you receive tenders from? And when was the decision made?
Lord High Admiral Vernon Watson of the Barbados Landship says the lack of membership has severely affected the association. His comments came as he addressed the Barbados Landship's 150th anniversary service. He says there's a role for all ages within the association.
If it are agreed that the Landship is an integral part of Barbados, then we must rebuild it even beyond its former glory and create an organization that can again fulfill the expectations of ordinary Bajans.
Lord High Admiral Watson also disclosed there are efforts to have 3 additional books, including a comet, produced about the Landship.
One for secondary school students studying theater arts, or CXC, another for primary schools, and a handbook for members. There is also an effort afoot to publish a comic book for children, and in an attempt to ensure that further generations know about the landship from very early.
And while delivering the sermon, Roman Catholic priest Monsignor Vincent Blackett said the landship should be incorporated into the school system. He believes the movement is an integral part of the Barbadian society and should be passed on to future generations.
And I believe that that time has come for us to start improving upon the landship. The landship, for example, should be introduced into our schools. And if there was a time when there was need for such, I think that time is now.
The Anglican Bishop of Barbados has charged the church with the task of preaching hope across the island. The Most Reverend Dr. John Holder was speaking at a special service to mark the 180th anniversary of the St. Paul Church. He said while there is no magic button that will solve the island's problems, the church and its teaching can give people the insight to deal with the hurdles in life.
In a country where the news these days seems to be a constant dose of pessimism, the church is mandated to preach hope. We do so by speaking of God's presence and control, and by reminding ourselves and others of the power of God available to us, power that should be put to work to make ourselves, our congregations, and our country better.